2022. We have had an opening karakia today, so we will move straight to apologies. Do we have any apologies? Councillor Tapani? The only apologies? Can I have someone move the apologies be accepted?
Happy to move.
Councillor Mawson, and seconded by Councillor Crown. All those in favour, please raise their hand. Carried. Any conflicts of interest? This is the responsibility of each individual to declare, so there being none, we'll move on. There are no public forum. Any announcements by the Mayor? No announcements by the Mayor. I have no announcements. Are there notification of any minor matters not on the agenda? No. Moving on to confirmation of the minutes of the Prosperous Napier Committee meeting held on Thursday, the 23rd of September 2021, be taken as a true and accurate record of the meeting. Would someone like to move? Councillor Price, seconded by Mayor Wise. All those in favour raise their hand. That is carried. Our first agenda item today is the Taradale Bridge Club sponsorship signage request, and the report has been provided by Jason Tickner, so hopefully he's online. Yes, Jason, would you like to introduce the paper, please?
Thank you, Chair Taylor, Councillor Taylor, and kia ora to councillors, and kia ora to our Mayor Kirsten Wise and Deputy Annette Brosnan. Thank you for your time today, and I do apologise. I'll probably be flicking my screen between the actual agenda item and the Zoom meeting, so I do apologise if it looks like I'm not necessarily looking at the screen. And kia ora as well to council staff watching this and members of the public. So today I bring this paper to council at the request of the Taradale Bridge Club, and that's to seek a council decision on a proposal for a sponsorship and naming rights of their proposed building clubhouse at the Park Island Sports Ground. The matter I'm looking to be resolved is that we gain a decision of council through this meeting under urgency for either the approval or declining of the club's request for the external signage that would see a substantial grant given to the club for naming rights from the Rodney Green Foundation and Blue Water Hotel to see signage placed on the sides of their building that has been approved for a lease within our council reserve land. So for a matter of background, the Taradale Bridge Club has been granted resource consent for the development of this building, and last year this matter was brought in front of council for a lease application. Under the Reserves Act, that matter was resolved and agreed to by council to gain or to give the lease to the club, subject to undergoing standard consultation under the Reserves Act. That consultation was undertaken and no objections were received, so we have been working with the Bridge Club to gain their signature on the final draft lease, which we are at the point of almost being signed with the Bridge Club, subject to this matter being resolved. So the issues that have come out from this is that since the Bridge Club have endeavoured to undertake this new building, there has been a reasonably lengthy process delayed through COVID and also with council processes of gaining lease and resource consent, etc. That has seen a dramatic increase in the cost of materials and build costs for their facilities. So when they originally presented to council for this proposal, they could cover the entire cost within their own capabilities of this build. Within the roughly 18 months to 2 years that it's taken to get to this point, the costs have gone beyond the means of the club to To mitigate this, they have looked for options and opportunities for funding, and they've been very fortunate to get a number of grants. And one of the forms of funding has been via a donation by the Rodney Green Foundation on the basis of naming and signage rights on their building within our reserve. So basically, the council's standard lease agreement basically gives us an ability to approve any signage, and it also outlines that advertising matter shouldn't be placed on the exterior of buildings. Through this decision, if it was approved, we would be obviously seeking that that clause would be rewritten to recognise this signage on the exterior of their building. There is an image within my report in figure 1 showing the proposed signage that is intended by the sponsor and by the club to put on the exterior of the building in Park Island. And if you haven't yet seen that, refer to figure 1. It's probably pretty critical in this matter to know what it's going to look like and the impact it will have potentially on surrounding users of the reserve. The club has also provided a bit of a list as part of their proposal of other sites and community buildings that the Rodney Green Foundation have sponsored to date. I'll just quickly run through that list. There's obviously the Pettigrew Green Arena, the Rodney Green Centennial Event Centre or Hall at McLean Park, as well as the Rodney Green Stand. The sports park in Hastings has had some significant sponsorship there and naming rights applied to their building recently. And of late, the Taradale Primary School, I believe, has had sponsorship for their swimming pool upgrades. So there will still be the likely requirement that resource consent will still be required for this signage if it was approved as part of the lease. So I've done a little bit of background research on that, and reading the district plan, although resource consent is most likely, the plan does identify that the council recognises that many sports clubs use signage as a way of generating revenue for their club and grounds operations. And the rule in the district plan is there to just ensure that any signage that is proposed is not obtrusive to the surrounding users or residents. And that purpose is repeated in our reserve management plan. So there is scope there, and I suppose it's been recognised in both our reserve management plans and district plan that clubs will from time to time look for advertising as a means to support their use, as is the case in this example. So the risks that I could see were around the appropriateness of the signage and consideration of the sponsorship and potential commercial branding of buildings and reserves, and any reputational risk to council. There is a risk that will be borne by the club if accepted around resource consent being granted or declined. And there's also risk around council's decision potentially having future impacts on the ability for other clubs or sports grounds to gain sponsorship through signage. So it's just, those were matters I believe that needed to be considered when considering this application. So the options I see for resolution by council is either to approve or decline the Taradale Bridge Club's proposal for the external sponsorship naming rights on their building, which we'll see, if granted, we'll see us needing to amend the lease agreement, the draft lease agreement, to recognise this, and the club to undertake a further resource consent with our planning team. Or alternatively, if it's declined, then the club has signalled that it's unlikely they'll be able to proceed with the project unless they can find a substantial funder of some sort. So I thank you for reading and listening to my paper, and I welcome the councillors to ask any questions through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason, for that. The first thing is that I'd like you just to expand on, and in your report, figure 1, there is a number of diagrams of the proposed signage. There has been some discussion, and is this the most recent discussion about the signage? Because I understand there has been some consideration to reducing the amount of signage on the building. Is that portrayed in figure 1, or is that an amendment?
So that figure that is provided in my plan was the last, or the only piece of communication showing the actual signage that I've had correspondence with the Taradale Bridge Club about. They did review for correctness my report before I submitted it to council, but I haven't been made aware of any changes. But if there are, yeah, I'm happy for that to be tabled, and I'm more than happy to come back through any mechanism once I've had a further discussion with the Taradale Bridge Club, if that is the case.
So just in our process, that this matter will again come before council in March, the full council meeting. So if, no, sorry, the decision.
Sorry.
Yeah,
okay. We're seeking a decision of council because of urgency around them signing their building contract, I believe. Yeah,
no, I right. Mayor White, I can see you wish to say something.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt, Councillor Taylor. And yes, just to advise that there has been some further communication with the Taradale Bridge Club, which apologies, Jason, council officers haven't seen that, just with some revised suggestions that they've discussed with the sponsor about changing the signage. In terms of the overall look and feel, it is essentially the same that's there now, with the main change being that the signage is coming off one of the facades completely, and that on the balance of the facades they're actually swapping it so that the Taradale Bridge Club name is the prominent name, with the sponsor's name sitting underneath it in a smaller font. So it will look aesthetically similar to what we have in the paper, but it's they've just actually put forward to us that they're wanting to make their branding and their name the prominent feature of the signage on the building, with the naming sponsors branding coming secondary to that.
Thank you, Mayor Wise, for that clarification. So I see that we have Councillor Brown. You have a question?
Yeah, I was just thinking, I would hate to limit the fundraising ability of any of our clubs. And I just wanted to double check. We don't put any limitation on any advertising internally, do we? So like theoretically, they could fill their lobby or their main hall with advertising with sponsors if that's what they chose to do.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, you're correct, Councillor Brown, that our current leases do only the provision or restrictions or controls, I suppose, are around the external signage. That's the same with our district plan as well. So we do allow internal signage for those sports grounds and facilities to support the clubs. Our controls are more around the external signage and the impact that may have outside of the club room, etc.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Simpson.
Yeah, through you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a question around longevity. Our lease with the Bridge Club is a finite term with right of renewal. So is the sponsorship signage and all that sort of carry on, is that also tied to the length of the lease, or can they have longer lengths? In other words, if they give up their lease, does that mean they have to remove the signage?
Yes, thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. My understanding is, yeah, you're quite correct, Councillor Simpson, in that our leases are finite and with right of renewal, whereas the club in their initial conversations and communication is that the signage is in perpetuity. The agreement won't be between Napier City Council and the Rodney Green Foundation. It will be between the club directly and the Rodney Green Foundation. So I do see the club needing to make that completely clear as part of their agreement with the foundation, the sponsorship, that yes, it's only as certain, the signage on the exterior building as certain as the lease is. And if the lease does change, then their rights to have that signage on that building would expire. So yes, that is a matter of clarification that the club will need to raise with the funder. Yeah, so we can only obviously provide a lease for a fixed time, and that's the maximum amount of certainty we can provide. That's a matter for the club and the funder to discuss in respect to how they work that matter of perpetuity.
Thank you for that clarification.
Councillor Bogue.
Yes, just a question, Mr. Chair. Are we being asked today to make a decision of council on signage as per the paper, which is slightly different from what we had discussed when we expressed some concern about that? Would it be possible for us to actually have a look at the signage that we subsequently looked at, which we generally found more acceptable, before we make this decision of council?
If I can, yeah. Oh.
Mayor Wise.
Thank you, Max. There are no current mock-ups of the proposal that has come through to us. And the thing that I'm incredibly conscious of is that the Bridge Club has already experienced significant delays, which have led to the cost of this project doubling. And I would be very hesitant to insist on having a mock-up at this stage, acknowledging as well that there is a resource consent required for signage. So there is another opportunity for council officers and us, if we are interested, to have a look at that. But I certainly would not be supportive of us creating any further delays for the Taradale Bridge Club.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. And really the paper is about approving or declining and making the amendment to clause 25 of the lease, which would therefore allow this signage. So as the Mayor has eloquently put, the resource consent will still need to be done, and we will have the opportunity to see the amended signage that had caused some concern. Do we have any other questions? There's no other hands raised. Mayor Wise, would you like to move the paper?
Happy to move.
And so you're moving the officer's recommendation to approve?
Yes.
And seconded by Councillor Crystal. You'd like to speak to it. And just prior to that, I would just like to say that we have been through a long process with the Taradale Bridge Club over this matter, and that they have done an amazing job to get to the place where they have already got to. And as you have made the point, the costs are increasing all the time, and we need to support this. And so over to you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. And yes, I'd certainly like to commend the Taradale Bridge Club for proactively seeking financial support to enable their project to go ahead. And as a council, you know, I don't believe that we want to ever be in a position where we're inhibiting a club or organisation's ability to attract sponsorship or grants. At the same time, I think it's important that we do have some control over any external signage and advertising which is going on buildings on council land. And I believe that the ongoing conversation we've had with the Taradale Bridge Club about revisions to the signage has been very productive. And without wanting to get into wordsmithing of the actual change that would be needed to made to clause 25, I think we need to leave that to the lawyers. But from my perspective, I think it is about the name and the branding of the club or organisation being the prominent feature on the building, and that any sort of sponsorship or naming rights should be secondary to that. And so how that is actually teased out in a legal sense within that clause, I will leave to the experts. But the direction that I would be giving, and whether we need to actually include this as part of the resolution, is that yes, we are happy to approve the amendment to clause 25, and that our primary objective that we're trying to achieve is that all signage is predominantly for the benefit of the club or organisation and their branding, and that any sponsor or naming rights is secondary to that.
Thank you. Councillor Crystal, do you wish to speak now?
Just concur everything that Mayor Wise said. Taradale Bridge Club have gone through jumped many hoops to get to this stage, and they've been out of their home for a very long time. Well, they haven't had a home for a very long time, so the sooner we can sort of help them get back. And I know they've got a lot of other clubs that are interested in using the facility as well, that no longer have premises or are finding it hard to get them. So the sooner they can move forward, and I think the amendments to the signage was appropriate. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Price.
Yeah, I'd just like to support the motion and the previous speakers. Seems ages ago that they gave a presentation to the Sustainable Napier Committee moving in this direction, and they've done a lot of work, and I'd hate to see us stop funding that will help them to achieve it, and that I support it. All the best to them. Thank you.
We've had at least 3 speakers speak in favour of the resolution. Do we have anybody who wishes to speak against it? No hands raised. So just so everybody is aware, the officer's recommendation was to approve the Taradale Bridge Club's proposal for external sponsorship, naming rights and associated signage from the Rodney Green Foundation on their proposed clubhouse building at Park Island. All those in favour, please raise their hand.
Sorry, before we proceed, Councillor Taylor, I'd just like to get some advice from governance whether they do feel we need to add to the resolution to actually provide that guidance around the alteration to the lease clause.
Yes, we can put that in to say that it's subject to the amendments. Hold on, I'll just have to check that.
Or even advice from the Chief Executive if she's...
Approval for external on the proposed clubhouse. Approval of Taradale's proposal.
The 1.7 with the development of the option basically states that the draft lease agreement will need to be amended appropriately, and the Bridge Club will then need to undertake any necessary resource consent process for the signage. So we could include that in the resolution.
And if I can talk through you, Mr. Chair, I have our legal executive was on leave while I was drafting this up, but I had some feedback from Brian Faulkner on this matter, and going through the legal ramifications of this, he believed that we still need to go through the matter with our solicitor, but that we were within our rights of the Reserves Act and the lease to make that amendment, and that the change in the lease is not contrary to the Reserves Act. So he felt that it was within our control and means, and that providing that council were comfortable with it, we could change that lease. So there has been some discussion around that, and it's been sought that it is okay. But yeah, we are requiring it to go through our solicitor, obviously, for that formal change.
And just through the chair, I think on the recommendations, and it has been noted through our minutes, Mayor Wise, that we will note those 4 conversations for inclusion with the lawyers. So I'm comfortable not to include it in the resolution per se.
Thank you.
I see the Chief Executive nodding as well. So if you're comfortable with that, Mayor Wise. Okay, so we'll put the resolution that we approve the proposal, and all those in favour, please raise their hands. Thank you. And against? Matter is carried. Thank you. Item 2 is our, can we find it? Investment.
Sorry, you'll need to do the decision.
Oh, the decision.
Yeah,
Council.
sorry.
Yep.
Thanks, Sam.
Someone like to move the part C of the recommendation that a decision of council is required urgently due to the funding arrangements for the building project. This will require the following resolution to be passed before the decision of council is taken. So in terms of section 82(3) of the Local Government Act, the principles set out in this section have been observed in such a manner that the Napier Council considers in its discretion is appropriate to make decisions on the recommendation. So someone like to move decision of council? Mayor Wise, seconded by Councillor McGrath. All those in favour, please raise their hand. Carried. Against? I didn't see any hands. So, right, item 2. The report on, investment and debt report. Carolyn Thompson.
Thank you. This is a standard report that has been a regular item on the quarterly audit and risk committee agendas in the past. We just had a bit of another look at it and thought that it's probably more relevant for the Prosperous Napier committee, and so it's going to be presented on a regular basis to this committee going forward. The report is self-explanatory, so I will take it as read and happy to answer any questions.
Very good, thank you, Caroline. Do we have any questions? And Richard, your hand is still up. Is that in relation to the investment and debt report? And you're on mute.
No, all good.
Okay. Any questions in relation to agenda item 2, investment and debt report? There being none, do I have someone who would like to move? Mayor Wise, second by Councillor Crystal. Do you wish to speak to it, Mayor Wise? No? No. All those in favour that we receive the report, snapshot report on the Napier City Council investment and debt as at the 31st of December, please raise their hand. Against? Carried. Item 3 is the report on the Three Waters Reform Programme, and we have Rebecca Huckle to speak to this.
Thank you, Mr.
Welcome.
Chair. Thank you. This is again a standard report that has been previously in the Sustainable Napier Committee, and it has now been moved to Prosperous Napier and will be going forward. Reasonably self-explanatory, so I'm happy to take this as read and answer any questions that the council may have.
If you have a question, please raise your hand. Councillor Brown.
Yeah, just a quick and easy one from me. The table that's at the end of the report, can we please have the key included for the colours of the drip
Certainly.
icons?
Certainly, I can do that going forward. Brown is not quite started or not where we want it to be. Green is happy and blue is the performance going forward so far, but I will include that key going forward.
Dirty water issues, Brown. Councillor Bogue.
Yes, just a question, thank you, Rebecca, about 3.4 significance and engagement, about program engaging with mana whenua through the iwi engagement on Three Waters and cultural values assessments program of work. Is this a Napier piece of work or is it national? Could you tell us a little bit about it, please?
Through the chair, yes, it is a Napier funded and instigated piece of work. So we are engaging with our local iwi to discuss the importance to them of our water. Also, we are trying to engage also with council staff as well to make them aware of the importance of the water around Napier and the importance to iwi so that they can make better decisions about what they're doing in future regarding water.
Just following on, if you don't mind, Mr. Chair, so will we see this report at some stage, or is it we're not quite sure when it's going to be ready, or what?
Through the chair, Yes, you will. So the engagement's still ongoing. We're getting separate reports from all our partners. So they will report into us as part of the plan, and we will collate them at the end of the time.
Thank you.
Mayor Wise.
Thank you, through the chair. Rebecca, just noting in the report that there has been highlighted a risk around not completing the projects, and that of course results in us having to return funding to DIA. Just to clarify, if the physical works of a project are underway, does that mean that it would be classified as complete by the DIA, so we wouldn't be at risk of losing the funding?
Through the chair, yes, as I understand it at the moment, I'm talking to our DIA counterparts, as long as the money has been committed and they can see that we have contracts in place and works are starting or nearing completion, we will get that funding. They're basing the funding on our projected spend going forward. So they need to see that we know that we're going to be spending the money. So on a quarterly basis, they review that and either withhold funding or give us more funding based on that. We also have an understanding that there will be a mop-up period at the end where obviously invoices will get paid after the 30th of June. So they're quite happy for that as long as we've got contracts or purchase orders in place for that.
Great, thank you. And just a subsequent question, and again, based on the report, would it be fair to say that it's that our highest risk is with some of those regional projects, and that you're relatively confident around the progress that's being made with our own specific Napier City Council projects?
Through the chair, yes, that would be correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? The officer's recommendation is that we endorse the report on the Three Waters Reform Programme. Do I have someone who'd like to move that? Councillor
I'm happy to move.
Seconded by Councillor Price. All those in favour, or do you wish to speak, Nigel? Mr. Councillor Simpson?
Just to the extent that ongoing conversations with staff demonstrate confidence in their ability to deliver the program. There are some issues around supply and contractor availability, but I think the project has been managed well and prudently, and because of their ongoing dialogue with DIA, I have confidence that the risks are minimal.
Thank you. Good portfolio report. And Councillor Price, do you wish to speak? You're muted.
I support it. Just disappointed it was taken off my committee, but that's all right. I'll get over it.
That's why I said you were the second to get that opportunity.
Yeah.
Okay. So we endorse the report. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Oh. Raise your hand. Those against, raise their hand. That is carried. That's our final item, and we have no public excluded items. So I would invite Deputy Chair Councillor Crown to close the meeting with our closing karakia.
Thank you, Graham. Ki tau te rangi Māori e ki runga I ngā iwi katoa o Ahuriri. Kia piki te ora te kaha me te māramatanga I ngā wā katoa, te hei mauri ora.
Thank you everybody for your attendance.